Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from Canada. This is spoken in the English and Micmac language with English subtitles, released in the year 2019, directed by Jeff Barnaby, and this film is called Blood Quantum. So Blood Quantum is set in a post-apocalyptic world. You have a zombie virus that has decimated the population, all except a few survivors who are the Indigenous people of Canada, basically the Aboriginal people. And so they have discovered that they're immune to the bites. So when they're bitten, they're not going to turn. They can still die of blood loss and injury, but they're ultimately different from the other survivors because they are not susceptible to this virus. And so they've formed this community, they have fortified themselves within these walls, and they try to live their days the best they can. But unfortunately, as the outside threat grows, so too does the threat from within, because there's a few tensions between these people that causes things to get out of control, and if they boil over, then maybe it will implode from the inside, which ultimately puts everyone's existence in danger. So whether or not that is the case is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Blood Quantum. This is a movie that came up on Shudder, which is a horror streaming service, and I really hadn't heard too much about it, so I didn't know what I was actually getting myself into, but it was not a risk, and so I thought, okay, well, why not give it a shot? And when I first saw it, I thought, well, it's not really exciting me. You know, the zombie subgenre has been done over and over. It's very, very generic. Once you've seen one, you've seen them all, and so that was the skepticism and hesitation coming into this film. But when I saw the trailer, it really piqued my interest, because I felt as though, this is a movie that is kind of outlining the struggles of the Aboriginal people of Canada, you know, the First Nations people, and not only in Canada, but the Native American Indians, you know, the Aboriginal people of Australia, all the Indigenous people of this world, and the hardships that they felt. And so I thought, well, that is an interesting sort of aspect. And so I definitely thought, I'm going to give this one a shot. You know, hopefully this is going to be one of those zombie films that really surprises me. So I was kind of curious, and I was kind of excited to see what Jeff Barnaby could produce. He made another film called Rhymes for Young Ghouls, and that was a very, very hard-hitting film. It was a very dark film. It wasn't a horror film as such, but it was definitely a movie that hit you on a very thought-provoking base. And so I thought, having a zombie horror film directed by Jeff Barnaby, this is something that could be good. And after watching the film, I will say that there are some aspects to this movie that really makes it definitely worth a watch, and it does give the movie a very mature sort of element that makes it to be taken very seriously, and that's something I like. This is not a film that is just recycling everything that George A. Romero did. Although there are elements that are very reminiscent of George A. Romero, it's not just copying everything as far as, you know, just having zombies running around mindlessly and just eating people. Although the movie does have generic moments, I still thought as though the overall subject sort of matter of this film gives it a little bit more of a double meaning, and that double meaning makes it a much more mature horror film. And your horror these days is to be laughed at. You know, if you're not a fan of horror, they'll all say, why do you watch that garbage? But this movie, it does have on the outside a typical zombie film, but on the inside, it does have a very strong heart, and that strong heart emulates what is social commentary, and it's the struggles of the Indigenous people. In this case, it's a selective community that are immune to this virus, but they're being surrounded by this virus. And I actually thought as though the zombies were a double meaning for colonialism. Is when these, you know, the white settlers came, and the hardships that the Indian people, or the Aboriginal people of Canada in this aspect, what they actually had to deal with. And the outside world being so foreign to them, they are zombies and basically taking over their land. And I thought, well, it's not hitting you over the head with, you know, social sort of justice, but it's hitting you with something that is a lot more thought-provoking, therefore giving the film a lot more justification for existing, as opposed to something just there for a cash grab. And that's something I really appreciate about Jeff Barnaby. I wasn't surprised, because this guy, he's a very good director, but I just thought as though he creates an entertaining sort of zombie horror film, but the movie has justification for existing. It's not just plagiarizing off another film, it's actually making something that you can think about on a realistic base, and that realistic base, as I said, is the colonialism. It's obvious, it's giving you an insight into the mentality and the psychology behind these people who had lost a lot, but it's not going over the top, hitting you over the head with it. It's basically saying that, okay, these are the hardships, but we're going to intertwine that with a horror film, and I thought it worked well for the most part. I thought as though it was actually quite riveting. I thought the overall characters were quite interesting. I really liked the main character. I thought he was very, very likable. I thought the gore effects were absolutely phenomenal. This is an incredibly brutal film, a lot more brutal than I thought it would be, and the actual violence was really well done. A lot of it was practical, so if you are a gore hound, you go into a zombie film expecting gore, it's exactly what you're going to get with Blood Quantum. I thought it was a lot nastier than I was first anticipating, so that was a welcome surprise. And I thought these zombies looked really good as well. And so again, this virus that has hit the outside world, it is emulating, the foreigners that had come onto this land and basically just squeezing the life out of these indigenous people. And so I thought that was by far the best aspect. I thought the runtime, it was fairly decent. It doesn't really get bogged down. And so that was all very good. But if I have one problem with this film, is that although the overall social commentary was very good, it took me back to George A. Romero with the Trilogy of the Dead, is that, he made these films that were actually a commentary on us as people, as well as a zombie movie. This is definitely a love letter to the early George A. Romero, but unfortunately the movie does, although it does have that social sort of aspect to it, the movie does follow a very similar formula, in that I knew which characters were going to betray the next character, I knew what was going to happen down this road, I knew what was going to happen down that road, and so there was a strong level of predictability. Is that underneath that sort of double meaning and the interesting qualities of the movie, the overall formula of the story and how it all transpires was quite predictable, because it does have a generic base as far as storytelling is concerned. So I didn't really like that aspect, is that, okay, I would have been a lot more invested into what was going on if it actually stayed and delved more into the social aspects of this movie. But ultimately, it wants to be an entertaining film. It wants to keep people watching, and that is exactly what it will do. Is that, as I said, the gore effects are really well done. The horror choreography, the action choreography was very good. The horror set pieces were really well done. There's a lot of suspense in there, but there's just a little bit of suspense that's taken away because I knew how these characters were going to go, because I've seen this done in other films. And so when you watch the movie, you kind of know where things are going to go, who is going to betray who, and what's going to happen. And unfortunately, that is because it has borrowed a lot of generic material as far as telling its story and the progression of the story. But ultimately, this is a film that is a little bit more serious. It's taking the zombie subgenre seriously, and it's using it as George A. Romero used it, in a very serious way, kind of giving you an aspect onto a very out of this world atmosphere and different dimension, but at the same time using that made up fantasy sort of horror world in a way where it emulates real life and the horrors of real life. And so it does hit you on more than just one level, and that's what I really appreciate about Blood Quantum. And so if you are a zombie fan, I would highly recommend it. As a result of that, I'm going to give Blood Quantum 3.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.